Starts. Battleground New York City, the fight for your vote. Your front row seat to the battle for New York's next mayor. It's the old guard clinging to power, chasing a candidate they never saw coming. Every night, our experts break it down.
What New Yorkers want above all else is authenticity.
We're listening to the people who matter most, you, the voters. And when the candidates sit across from us, nothing's off the table. What's your plan to make New York City feel like a safer city?
S.E Cupp, that's your perception. Of course, there's a lot of crime.
So what's happening right now? Let's dive in. Welcome to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. It's Monday, October 20th, and we are just 15 days away. That's right, 2 weeks and a day from this all-important New York City mayoral election that we've been covering all of these weeks. And later in today's show, we're going to talk to a returning guest about a key issue in this race. But first, as always, let's get to some news. And joining me now is Morgan McKay, political reporter for Fox 5 New York. Welcome back, Morgan.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. And as we do on Mondays, we ask you where the candidates were over the weekend, which always gives us a little insight into, where they think the race is and what kind of voters they're still trying to shore up. This was one of the last weekends before the election. So where were they and what were they doing?
Yeah, it's 2 weeks until the election, at least 2 weeks from tomorrow. And all three candidates should be having a pretty stacked campaign schedule from here until election day. Now, over the weekend, Zohran Mamdani, we'll start with him. On Saturday, it was his birthday, so he didn't have any public events that I saw on his campaign schedule. He did post some canvassers in neighborhoods going out in each neighborhood. Now, on Sunday, he went to a church. He went out canvassing in Queens. He participated in a mayoral forum with Andrew Cuomo. Curtis Sliwa didn't go to this mayoral forum, but Sliwa was at a separate event in Brooklyn. And then afterwards, he hosted a soccer tournament with his supporters in Coney Island, which seemed to draw a pretty big crowd. Now, Curtis Sliwa, I think he's had the most campaign events out of all of the candidates since the beginning of, at least since the primary ended. On Saturday, he attended the funeral for a person recently killed in the subway. He went to a synagogue, the Diwali parade. And then on Sunday, he was at a religious service, a No More Shelters rally, and an Italian Heritage Street Festival. And then Cuomo, he's been hit recently in a New York Post article just came out about how he hasn't really held a lot of campaign events when it comes to actually going out and mingling with voters. But whenever he does have an event, it's usually on the weekend. And that's what we saw this past weekend. He, on Saturday, he met with the NYPD Hispanic Society, and then he went to a religious service and then did some campaigning in the Bronx. And then on Sunday, he launched this group called South Asians for Cuomo. He incorrectly called it Southeast Asians for Cuomo, but his campaign later corrected that. But then he did some one-on-one interviews, which we're seeing him do a little bit more frequently.
Okay. Good. So busy weekend, and I'm sure we'll have a busy week. In other news, there's a new poll out by Gotham Polling and City ARP. It's interesting, but I don't want to over-index it too much. It says that if Curtis Sliwa dropped out, frontrunners Zohran Mamdani and former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo would be within just 4 points of each other, with Mamdani leading Cuomo 44.6% to 40.7%. We knew that's what all the polls were saying would happen if Sliwa dropped out. But we're two weeks away. Sliwa has said he is not dropping out. And with him in the race, the polls are about where they've previously stood. So is this race essentially frozen?
Well, like you said, S.E., I mean, we've been talking about this for months now. Andrew Cuomo has made the same argument for the past 3 months that he would be doing better in this race if everyone else were to drop out. And he made that same argument during the primary as well. And he was able to get some people to drop out to endorse him. And, we're even seeing it now with Mayor Eric Adams, who hasn't endorsed him, but he has dropped out. Jim Walden, another independent candidate, dropped out, and he did endorse Cuomo. But Cuomo now focusing his his eyes on Curtis Sliwa to try to get him to drop out, saying his chances would be better. But the response so far coming from both Sliwa and even Zohran Mamdani is saying, maybe you should focus on your own campaign and actually campaigning, because in the end, Sliwa's polling at about 15%. And if you were to go by the polls, then he shouldn't need Curtis's 15% anyway. He should just be focused on building his own coalition of voters.
And I know Cuomo and his supporters are blaming Curtis Sliwa for why he is stuck where he is in the polls. As you make the case, that's not entirely true, probably. But what's Sliwa saying in return?
Sliwa has really said, I think, 10 different ways today that he is not going to be dropping out of the race. And you also have an issue here which was what Sliwa was saying, even if he were to drop out of the race, there's no guarantee that his 15% support is going to go to Andrew Cuomo. The Republicans have spent the last 10 years while he was governor blaming pretty much everything under the sun that was wrong in this state on Cuomo and Democrats. And now, to Sliwa's point, he was saying, now you're expecting Republicans to just flip that switch off and go vote for Cuomo. It doesn't necessarily mean that his votes will go to Cuomo, even if he were to drop out. But he says there's no way he is.
Yeah. And if I know New York City Republicans, and I do, the Cuomo crossover, it just isn't a thing. It could be with another moderate Democrat. I just don't see that being a thing. So targeting moderates is probably a good idea, but targeting Sliwa voters, I just don't know that that makes any sense. With limited time and resources left in this race, I don't know that I'd be wasting any of my energy on that, especially since, as you mentioned, and I've mentioned, and he himself has said, he is not going anywhere. Okay, Morgan, stay right there. I've got more questions for you after the break. More Battleground NYC after this. And Battleground NYC is back once again with Morgan McKay, political reporter for Fox 5 New York. So, Morgan, we still don't have a post-debate poll. And there's another debate this week, so there's still opportunity for things to change, right? We don't know exactly where the electorate is post-debate.
It's hard to tell right now. And there was a poll actually from Fox News that came out right before the debate that showed Mamdani breaking that 50% for the first time and getting 50% support. It saw Cuomo slipping a little bit, and it saw Sliwa actually gaining a couple percentage points. But again, that was before the debate. I'd be curious to see where sentiment is. But as you mentioned, that second final debate is going to be this Wednesday, just right after that first debate. And hopefully after both of these debates, voters will have a better understanding of all three candidates and will be able to see exactly where people are leaning, likely 1 week before the election.
Yeah, and we had on a pollster from Marist at the end of last week who said they're not doing a poll between the two debates. They're doing one after the second. So we'll have to see if we get someone else's poll before this Wednesday debate, but there are like 2 days left. So who knows? Tell us what you know about this week's debate. Who's hosting it? When exactly is it? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so New York 1 is going to be hosting the debate. It will start at 7 p.m. and it will be moderated by Errol Lewis, who has been on this show. And he's a great journalist, so I'm sure he'll have some hard-hitting questions for all the candidates. But after last week's debate, the moderators, I felt like, really dug into Cuomo's record as governor. I think that he faced a lot of tough questions there. I think they also really hit Mamdani on two of his weaknesses, which is public safety and Israel. And I also think that they also, focused as well on some of Sliwa's downfalls as well when it comes to some of the controversy surrounding when he was a guardian angel. But I think that this week is probably going to dive, if I had to guess, a little bit deeper into policy just because of who's moderating the debate. So I'd be interested to see exactly if any of those stances have changed and how they react.
That's a really good point. I know Errol Lewis a really long time from both CNN and the New York Daily News, where we both have columns. He knows the city so well, and he has covered so many of these elections. He knows the issues really well. I was a little kind of weirded out that the last debate was an hour before it got to affordability.
Yeah.
And how's it, like, it started on Israel and Trump and all the other things that I know are national conversations, but I would be willing to wager Errol Lewis flips that. Do you know anything about the way the candidates are preparing for this one? Has anyone planned to make any changes in their strategy?
So far, the candidates are, I believe, really, I think, just still kind of coming off of this last debate. I think people, just because of how close they were, I'm not sure yet exactly what they're going to hit on strategy. I think, like we were talking about before, I think with Curtis Sliwa and Zohran Mamdani, not that they necessarily had similar attacks, which they did sometimes during this last debate. Mamdani a couple times said, like, yeah, what Curtis Sliwa said. But I think, maybe in this debate, maybe Sliwa distanced himself a little bit more from Mamdani and tries to focus some more of his attacks on Mamdani and democratic socialism. And I'm curious to see as well what Andrew Cuomo's new strategy is going to be, because during this last debate, we heard a lot of the same attacks that he made during the primary, which didn't work in the primary. We'll have to see if they work in the general election.
Well, and this is it. So if we're going to see a big change, it's going to come on Wednesday night. All right, we haven't talked about this in a couple weeks, but just to remind viewers, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries still has not endorsed Mamdani or anyone else in this race. And as we noted, it's 2 weeks away. He did address this yesterday on the Sunday shows. He said, I expect to have a conversation with Mamdani at some point this week in advance of early voting, which begins next weekend in New York City. And we'll certainly have more to say about the mayor's race and about our Democratic nominee prior to early voting beginning. Okay, so Morgan, do you read that as Jeffries will endorse sometime this week, or is this another punt?
It's hard to say, because not only did he say that, a few weeks ago, he also said that he was going to be weighing in on the mayor's race before October 25th, which is the start of early voting, which is Saturday. So he only has a couple of days if he is going to be weighing in like he said he was going to do. I think he also expected the government shutdown to be over at this point. So it's unclear if he's going to maybe use that as an excuse to maybe say, you know what, my focus needs to be on Washington right now. I can't focus on the mayoral race at home. At the same time, because he's been silent, there's already talks of potentially certain people talking about primarying him because he has been so silent. So I think also, no matter what he does, he's going to be tied to Mamdani. And I think the fear is that they're going to welcome in the Democratic Socialists. However, from my talks with Republicans, they're already going to tie Jeffries and Schumer to Mamdani no matter what.
Of course they are. Of course they are. That's why I don't get this. It doesn't make any sense, but we'll see. We should take a bet or do a poll on whether he's going to get an endorsement in by the time this race is over, or we just won't get one. Morgan McKay, thanks so much. And before I let you go, we know you're interviewing Mamdani on Friday of this week, so everyone should tune into Fox 5 to see that. Good luck with it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. More after the break, more Battleground NYC when we return. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And joining me now for the bigger picture is Pete Sikora, who runs the Super PAC Livable Future, a group supporting Zohran Mamdani. He is also the climate campaigns director at New York Communities for Change. Pete, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, remind folks one more time before we get into everything what Livable Future is all about.
We are banging on doors to elect Zohran Mamdani. It's a super PAC, as you said, an independent expenditure committee. And we're talking about how to lower pollution and cut energy bills to fight climate change.
And the last time you were here, we talked about your fundraising for this PAC. 1 month since that conversation. How's it going? Where are you guys at?
You know, I've been a busy beaver. So we've raised what I thought we were going to raise, which is about $50,000, which is great.
Yep.
That's good for us. But at the same time, a pro real estate Wall Street kind of super PAC that is on the opposite side has announced they've raised $1.3 million. So that kind of reflects the spending gap. We'll be outspent, 20 to 1 on this issue, and that's how it goes.
Where and how have you been spending the money? Like, where does $50,000 go for you guys?
That's such a great question. It's you got to figure out how to spend it in a way that makes sense. And so what we want to do is target 1 and 2 family homeowners in African American and Caribbean American communities in the Bronx and in Brooklyn to move them on these issues. These are demographics that Zohran lost by a large majority in the primary, but that we think can be moved fast towards Zohran Mamdani on these issues. And so that's what we're doing. We're banging doors in those communities to spread those issues and get votes for Zohran.
You say they can be moved fast from being Cuomo voters to Mamdani voters. There's 2 weeks left. Like, how? Can you get these? Can you get them?
Yeah,
them to turn out for Mamdani.
I'm ready to throw down a Joe Namath guarantee here, which is in the election districts that we are in. Zohran Mamdani is going to win by quite a bit. So while he lost by about 35, 40 points in these election districts, I think he's going to win solidly in these districts. And I know it because we're knocking on doors and we're getting a 20 to 1 response from Mamdani versus Cuomo. Now, of course, people are nicer to you at the door than they will be actually in the voting booth, but that's a very positive response.
Yeah, and I actually think making those face-to-face connections gives you a very good idea. It feels anecdotal because it's not a poll and it's not scientific, but I think it does give you a good sense of where voters are at. And if you're just getting a lot of doors slammed in your face or saying, I'm not with that guy, that guy's a crazy communist, whatever it would be, I think you would have a sense too of where this is going.
That's right. He's going to crush in these election districts. And so our job is to push up his margins so that he does even better.
Last time you made the pitch that climate change, while not explicitly a major issue in this election, is one of affordability, which I think is really smart framework. Is that resonating as you go door to door and talk to voters and try to bring up an issue that sounds like it might not be top 3 or even top 5, but when you talk about it the way you do, is it resonating?
People want lower bills and they want lower pollution. So absolutely, when you pull those things together, that is highly resonant to folks who are paying for over expensive oil and gas boilers that they have to keep maintaining and pay too big bills for. So if you're a 1 and 2 family homeowner, you know that struggle to pay those bills. So if you can reduce those bills while getting more energy efficient and cutting pollution, that's a very attractive proposition.
What about young people? Are you meeting a lot of young people who are either already with you, because that's an
Yeah,
issue that matters to them,
right.
or maybe are saying, look, I'm just trying to make rent right now. Don't bother me with this stuff. Like, what's the reception you're getting from young people?
It's great. He's doing better among young people than older people, but
Yeah,
that is Mamdani's doing better.
yeah,
Cuomo's not doing well among young people. Young people are future oriented. They're more progressive. They're more like willing to embrace change. So all of those things militate towards Mamdani.
and what about, you mentioned this sort of like, you're getting the pushback from predictable places, including, Wall Street and real estate developers, and those two industries. And again, not surprising. And they have concerns with Mamdani, and they've been pushing back against Mamdani's larger agenda. Are you finding any inroads where you can reach, business minded New Yorkers who
Oh yeah.
aren't like Occupy Wall Street folks?
Oh, absolutely. There's a
Mhm.
huge industry growing up in energy efficiency right now that these laws that we're working to pass and have passed, like Local Law 97, that's
Yeah.
creating a large number of jobs and a new industry in energy efficiency work. So, Local Law 97 is creating thousands of jobs right now in that sort of work. So, there are people whose jobs and livelihoods are owed to these laws. So, they're
Yeah.
supporters.
Okay, Pete, don't go anywhere. I've got more questions for you after the break. Battleground NYC. We'll be right back.
Cool.
We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. One more time with the bigger picture is Pete Sikora. He runs the Super PAC Livable Future. It's a group supporting Zohran Mamdani. So, Pete, there was a debate last week, as you know,
Yeah.
the first of the general election. And, environmental issues barely came up in this debate. That's the prerogative of the moderators. But I read something interesting that Columbia University's director of the master's program in sustainability management, Stephen Cohen, wrote
Oh,
just today or yesterday. He said, watching these fellas the other night, I understood their emphasis on the city's affordability and public safety, but was looking for at least a sign that they understood that with 600 miles of shoreline and decaying sewage and transportation infrastructure, this city is one extreme weather event away from a catastrophic interruption of business as usual that would make Hurricane Sandy look like a walk in the park. As a voter, I'd like to know where they stand on these issues. Do you think that the candidates were asked enough about environmental issues in that debate?
You know, as a New Yorker, I want my pet issue to be like the center of everything. So, of
Yeah.
course, I think more questions are merited. But in all seriousness, this is a devastating problem. Um, my daughter, my son, they're going to see 20% of New York City underwater in the future. That's the path we're on right now. You can't have an affordable city with 20% underwater.
Yeah.
And so we have to get off this path of destruction globally and locally through more pollution. And that's an opportunity for a lot of good jobs and lower energy bills. So we can create a better society as we avoid catastrophe. So yes, I think this should be asked about a lot more. I think all the candidates should be talking about it a lot more. And they should talk about it the way that we talk about it, that Mamdani talks about it, pull issues together, because it's not just in one silo, everything is affected.
Yeah, we've got a debate on Wednesday. What are some of the environmental issues that you wish would come up? Because there are a lot.
Yeah.
What are some of them you wish would come up in this debate? If Errol Lewis is listening to you, what would you tell him to ask?
I would say, Errol, that keep up the work you're doing. But in particular, you should drill in on how we're going to cut pollution from buildings and transportation while lowering costs and creating good jobs. SE, you raised the issue of how does the city survive extreme weather events. That plus the day-to-day pounding from rising sea levels and heat waves are huge challenges for the city. Really, the only challenges you can say probably are truly existential for the city. So yeah, that's, I think, big ones. But in addition, Mamdani's talking about fast and free buses. That's a central part of his platform. He doesn't talk about it as a climate issue, but it is. That cuts pollution. And then I would also talk about plastic pollution. I pick up a lot of trash on my block. Half of it is single-use plastics. It's gross. It's polluting. It's bad. It should be cleaned up.
Well, yeah, let's, I know this is an issue that's interesting to Errol and that Errol cares about. So, I have to imagine he will raise it. But what you're saying is, I think, really important, and it's important for anyone pushing an issue that is not a top 3 issue. And I'm not suggesting climate change isn't. I'm just, when we look at polls, people rank their priority issues. It's affordability, housing, and crime. So I think what you can do to make it a top 3 issue by tying it in and telling your candidate to tie it in and make that connection for voters who, in 2024 would roll your eyes if you said, "Do you care about democracy?" And they'd say, "I'm just trying to put food on the table. I don't have time to care about democracy," right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I think more folks, again, this isn't about your issue specifically. It's about all the issues. You got to meet people where they are. And if you can't make it a top concern, they're just not going to pay attention.
That's absolutely right. And that's, what our job is to convey issues in a way that really matters and moves people. And so we're up against big, tough odds. There's big polluting interests that like the status quo. And so they're pushing in the other direction to make it impossible for us to move forward. I'm legally prohibited from literally talking to Zohran Mamdani about his campaign. Right. This is an independent effort. But that's absolutely the case. All the candidates should tie these issues together. And I think he does it best. And he's going to win this election because of it and what he's running on. We
have your prediction. He's going to win this election. What's the first thing you're going to ask him to do when he becomes mayor?
He has already pledged to fully implement and enforce Local Law 97. And what we want him to do is to create a program that will cut pollution, create jobs, and reduce energy bills from 1- and 2-family homes by getting rid of those old dirty boilers and paying for good, clean HVAC to replace it. That really helps people on bills and it cuts pollution.
How long a leash are you going to give him? How much time are you going to give him?
Mayor's a tough job. I don't know. He's got to get right on it. But in truth, we want to see that in the first budget and then passed as a program. So that's really where the rubber hits the road, is the first executive budget.
Well, I'm glad you come on the show and lay out, the contours of that issue. I know it matters to a lot of people. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll check in with you one last time before this election's over,
Fun.
especially if these issues come up on Wednesday. Thank you so much at home for paying attention and tuning into Battleground NYC. We'll be back tomorrow and every Monday through Friday until this thing is over. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Battleground. We're now joining Live Now's nonstop stream of live and breaking news.